Picture this. You're back in elementary school. You're a bright kid, an imaginative kid. You're sharper than a lot of the other kids your age. You notice things that others don't. Schoolwork comes easy to you, sometimes too easy. You finish your assignments faster than the rest of the class. This leaves you a lot of time to sit there staring out the window and daydream. Then one day you get pulled out of class. You're taken to a windowless room that you've never seen before. They give you puzzles to solve. They ask you strange questions. They make you wear headphones and play strange sounds in your ears. They give you a cup containing an unknown pink liquid and tell you to drink it. While all this is going on, a stranger in a suit sits in a corner, observing you and taking notes. Everything about this makes you feel uncomfortable, but you do what you're told because you're a child. And these are grown-ups, and they keep telling you how special you are. What's especially strange about this experience is that by the time you reach adulthood, you barely remember any of this. It's all just one big blank. That is until one day when it finally starts to come back to you, bit by bit. If any of this sounds familiar to you, then you are likely part of the G.A.T.E program. G.A.T.E stands for Gifted and Talented Education. And if the rumors are to be believed, this wasn't just some innocent program to encourage young minds. It was actually part of a top-secret government experiment. If you're new here, let me welcome you and introduce myself. I'm Nate Hale, and I've been doing this podcast for a number of years now. And if you've been following me all this time, thanks for coming along on this journey with me. I love telling stories about everything strange and unusual throughout history. Everything from UFOs to cryptids to true crime and government conspiracies. That being said, the reason I wanted to tell you about the G.A.T.E program is because it's a story that I have a personal connection to. You see, back in the 1980s, I was one of those kids who became part of the program. And to this day, I still have a lot of questions about what actually happened while I was in the program. I'm not alone in that regard either. In recent years, a lot of people online have begun sharing their personal experiences about what they remember about the G.A.T.E program. You might know this program under a number of different names. Sometimes it's called TAG, or LEAP, or G.A.T.E. Or sometimes it's just referred to as the Giftedness program. Throughout the 1980s all the way through the early 2000s, these programs began popping up in school districts across the United States. On the surface, it all sounds fairly innocent. These giftedness programs were supposed to identify the brightest and most talented students in each school, offering them more accelerated learning opportunities, special projects that challenged the students' problem-solving skills, and providing new forms of creative expression. But according to a number of people who were in the G.A.T.E program, there was a lot more going on than just getting to skip out of your regular classes and getting extra computer time to play Oregon Trail. Keep in mind, there are lots of former G.A.T.E students out there today who insist their experiences in the program were completely normal and that nothing out of the ordinary was going on. On the other hand, though, there is still a vocal number of former G.A.T.E children who've begun posting online that whatever was happening inside the program, it was anything but innocent. One of the strangest things you'll hear constantly about these giftedness programs is how little of it many people, including myself, actually remember about it. But in recent years, with the growth of social media, many now adult former G.A.T.E children have begun comparing notes on Reddit forums in places like TikTok and Instagram, sharing what they remembered about the program. And a lot of these stories range everywhere from the peculiar to the downright disturbing. As for my own story, I know I was in the program. I remember getting to leave class early all the way from elementary school through middle school. The funny thing is, though, I don't remember a lot beyond that. I know I went to a different room inside my school for my special classes, and I know that my teacher was someone who wasn't part of the regular staff at my school. But I couldn't tell you the name of that teacher, and I also couldn't tell you for sure who the other kids were in my group. Although I know for certain there were others. I'm not alone in these sort of hazy memories about the program either. For a program that was spread out in school districts all across the United States, there are a lot of commonalities you'll hear from former G.A.T.E students. Most of these kids were selected for the program during the 3rd or 4th grade. Some people claim they were initially taken to a windowless room, sometimes even to a windowless trailer outside the school. There they were presented with logic problems or puzzles to solve. Other people describe being asked questions that seem completely nonsensical. Things like, how many hairs are there? Or, what color is sound? The instructors were almost always complete strangers. Some people also describe these adults acting oddly hostile if you gave them an answer they didn't like. Other former GATE kids said they were given Rorschach tests. These are the sort of inkblot tests you see in psychiatrist offices. Or even stranger still, some people report being tested with Zener cards. These are a specially designed deck of cards that are used to test extrasensory perception. What happens during this sort of testing is that the tester asks you what the next card will be just by thinking about it. Which of course begs the question, if this is true, why the heck were they testing elementary school kids for ESP? Then there's the pink drink. Many former GATE kids, myself included, remember being given paper cups of a chalky pink liquid and being told to drink it. Some people say this was nothing more than a fluoride rinse you were told to swish around in your mouth and spit out. Others say that after they drank the liquid, something a lot more disturbing happened though. Some people claim they would wake up later back in class like they never left and with no memory of how they got there. Then there was the hearing test. One of the most common stories that gets told by former GATE kids is that they were made to wear big padded headphones and that they were given what they were told was a hearing test.
This is the first step along your path to a gateway beyond which is discovery, your own discovery of reality.
Only this wasn't like any normal hearing test you'd get from the school nurse. People who remember these tests recall hearing unusual high-pitched chirping sounds and odd tones in each ear, followed by a man's voice giving them instructions. A number of people online believe they know what these hearing tests really were. And if true, it might provide the first major clue as to what was really going on inside the GATE program. A lot of people think these hearing tests were actually what are known as the Gateway experience. That name alone might provide some hint that there may be a connection to the GATE program, although officially the fact that these two programs share the word GATE is just a coincidence. So what is the Gateway experience? According to a declassified CIA report from 1983, the Gateway experience was a secret program to expand human consciousness and to develop mental abilities. The Gateway process was created by a former radio executive named Robert Monroe. Beginning in the 1950s, he began experimenting with certain audio tones that he believed could produce different effects on the human body. Everything from enhanced learning to hypnotic states and out-of-body experiences. Pretty soon, Monroe's work caught the attention of the CIA, which had already been experimenting with the human mind for the previous couple decades. This started in the 1950s with their now infamous experiments into mind control that we know as MKUltra. MKUltra was officially dismantled in 1973. But that wasn't the end of the government's experiments into the human mind. One of the offshoots of MKUltra was Project Stargate. This was another series of covert experiments that went through a series of different names, including Brill Flame and Sunstreak. You might know it from the book or movie The Men Who Stare at Goats. This was an experiment into remote viewing and other psychic abilities that came about after U.S. intelligence sources learned that the Soviet Union was developing their own psychic spy program. One of the many avenues that was explored in the Stargate program were ways to expand human consciousness. And one of the ways this was attempted was through Robert Monroe's binaural sounds. Now keep in mind, we don't know that the Gateway tapes were what were being used on children inside the Gifted program. But a number of now-grown students who underwent those audio tests have claimed that when they listen to the Gateway tapes, it causes a visceral reaction, usually feelings of fear and anxiety.
This is the Hemisync demonstration exercise. It is designed to acquaint you with the Hemisync process so that you have a better understanding of the effects of its use and the potentials of its applications in the area of your particular interest. First of all, set the volume in your headphones so that you hear my voice very softly, just enough to understand my words and no more. Now relax a moment as you listen to the sound of ocean surf, the sound of natural power, a symbol we use to depict the natural power of Hemisync. I'll return with you in a few moments.
That's just a small sampling of one of the Gateway tapes. You can find the rest on YouTube if you're interested in hearing more. But I'll tell you right now, I tried listening to them, and I don't know what it is, but I was only able to listen so long before I had to stop. Robert Monroe believed that his gateway tapes could expand the human mind and allow you to astral project your consciousness away from your body. During the 1970s and 80s, the U.S. Army sent personnel to the Monroe Institute to train themselves to have out-of-body experiences. Now, the official line goes that the Stargate program was ended in 1995 after it never produced any useful intelligence. But that's not entirely true. There were a few very promising psychics who came out of the Stargate program, people like Ingo Swann and Joe McMoneagle, who performed some startlingly accurate feats of remote viewing that were documented and verified as real. If you want to hear more about the Stargate program, leave me a comment below and maybe I'll do another video about it. Seriously, you want to hear about how the psychics discovered alien bases on the moon and life on Mars. So if the CIA and the U.S. Army was willing to train troops in astral projection and remote viewing, the question is, was it possible they would attempt to develop psychic abilities in school children? That's one of the leading theories about what was really going on inside the GATE program. The CIA's declassified report on Robert Monroe's Gateway program details many of the methods that were used to expand human consciousness, including hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and biofeedback. But would they have actually attempted to perform such experiments on unsuspecting children? Well, it wouldn't be the first time the government experimented on its own citizens without their consent or knowledge. If you trace the timeline backwards, you can see where this all starts with MKUltra. These were a series of covert experiments conducted in university labs and hospitals throughout North America. Many of these experiments into mind control were conducted on unsuspecting participants who were dosed with a variety of hallucinogenic drugs. There are even reports of some mental hospital patients who basically had their entire memories and personalities wiped clean and had to relearn how to speak and feed themselves. But in 1973, once news of these experiments were being reported in the New York Times, then CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all records of MKUltra be destroyed. It was only by accident that a number of records managed to survive. Although officially the MKUltra program was shut down in 1973, we know for a fact that many offshoot programs like Project Stargate lived on. The one thing we don't have, though, is any concrete evidence that the program evolved into the GATE program. Okay, so let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Suppose the pink drink that so many people remember ingesting wasn't some brainwashing drug, but rather it was something entirely innocent. Some people think it may have simply been Pepto-Bismol, which is a pink chalky liquid, and a lot of school nurses probably would have stocked up on it to help soothe some upset tummies. Others think people are having false memories about a simple fluoride rinse, the same sort of rinse you're given at the dentist. All the puzzles the GATE students were given could have simply been logic problems to challenge young minds. The hearing test could have been exactly that, a hearing test and nothing more. All of it could be exactly what it seems. But then why do so many people think there was something more sinister going on? Some of the stories you'll hear from former GATE kids are downright bizarre. One Reddit user posted on a thread claiming that he and his fellow GATE kids were taken to a museum and left alone all night without adult supervision inside the mummy exhibit. Other individuals claimed that after they'd leave school they could close their eyes and they would see strange, colorful fractal patterns. One further thing you'll hear among some former GATE students is that there were actually two different groups of kids. There were the ones who were selected for GATE testing, and the ones who were selected from that group who tested especially high in certain aptitudes. These kids were singled out and were groomed throughout their lives for political positions or other high-powered jobs in the business world, while some kids who didn't make the cut into the elite group have claimed that it almost feels like for the remainder of their lives, forces have conspired to keep them as beaten down as possible. There's even one related, even darker theory that goes that the pink drink really was actually a highly concentrated dose of fluoride, which in strong enough dosages is believed can inhibit some higher brain functions. This theory being that the fluoride was being used to inhibit children's IQs, or even their latent psychic abilities. In other words, to basically prevent them from excelling later in life. There are even some former GATE kids you'll find online who believe that they are still being monitored to this day, well into adulthood. Some former GATE kids claim that they've noticed that they seem to get unusually lenient treatment when they get pulled over for traffic stops, or have other interactions with law enforcement. It's almost as if there's something in their record that directs police to let them off easy. There is one alternate theory that puts aside all the psychic training stuff, which suggests that the courses the GATE children were taught were actually early training to help develop the next generation of code breakers for the NSA, which, considering some of the worksheets some online users have posted featuring translating Russian and other codes kids were asked to solve, this would almost make sense. Except then you have to wonder, well, where are all these NSA jobs? Now, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, there's yet another theory that suggests the real reason for all the training into developing psychic abilities wasn't just to train psychic spies for remote viewing, but rather to create powerful telepaths who are able to communicate with aliens. This theory suggests that aliens are becoming to Earth and working with the US government. But since they only communicate telepathically, the government needed to train a new generation of psychics to work with them. I know, it all sounds crazy. But it gets even weirder still. Many former G.A.T.E kids say they share a common forehead scar that they can't explain. Others say many G.A.T.E kids all share the same pronounced occipital bun in the back of their skulls. A number of others all say they nearly drowned in childhood or had some other near-death experience. There's a lot more than that, but you get the idea. Now, to me, a lot of these things sound like some people are reaching for connections that aren't really there. This is natural, though. Human beings are hardwired to attempt to make connections between different things to bring chaos from disorder. I don't have a forehead scar, and as far as I know, the bump on the back of my skull is just a normal bump. I don't recall having a near-drowning experience when I was little, and it would seem to me that the number of children who shared a near-drowning experience and fit all these other criteria would have to be fairly low. At the same time, I should point out that I really did have a near-death experience when I was hospitalized with an illness when I was 7. Does it mean anything in the grand scheme of things? I remain skeptical, but open-minded. Oh, and then there's Mall World. There's a whole subset of Reddit users and TikTok accounts dedicated to people who claim that they were all in the Gifted program who share the same lucid dream about visiting what they call Mall World. That name is a little misleading because allegedly Mall World is one massive complex that involves schools, hospitals, theaters, and more. But the one thing everyone claims is that they are all having the same dream about the same place. Some people even claim that they have met and communicated with other people in this dreamscape. Then they have gone on to meet that person in real life. Mall World is another subject worthy of its own episode, so drop me a comment below if you'd like to hear more. Or let me know if you've ever visited Mall World in your dreams. I'd love to hear about it. Now, one thing to keep in mind when considering all these stories about the G.A.T.E program is that false memories are a real thing. One possible reason a lot of us can't remember what happened to us in the G.A.T.E program can also simply be attributed to it all happening a long time ago when we were just kids. Let's face it, school can be boring. Boring enough that you forget things. It doesn't necessarily mean that we were all drugged into forgetting, it's just time marching on. The human mind is also very suggestible when it comes to creating false memories. This is a big problem in court cases involving eyewitness testimony. If you hear one person say, "Hey, do you remember getting tested with Zener cards when you were a kid?" then part of your brain might instantly say, "Oh yeah, I remember that too." Pretty soon this game of telephone keeps spreading and suddenly a lot of people remember it that way. On top of all that, with so many gaps in our collective memories, it's natural to want to fill in the blanks. This is also how a lot of conspiracy theories start. The problem is, without any official reports or corroborating evidence, it's impossible to prove one way or the other. We do have actual CIA declassified reports that describe MKUltra, Project Stargate, and the Gateway process, but there have never been any official records tying any of these experiments to the G.A.T.E program. At the same time, the lack of evidence doesn't necessarily mean there's nothing there either. We wouldn't know anything about MKUltra either if someone hadn't messed up and forgotten to destroy a batch of records kept in a government warehouse. But what do you think? Were you in the G.A.T.E program when you were little? Let me hear your personal stories by commenting below. I really want to hear more. And let me know if you want me to do more videos on this topic. Thanks again.